We've all been taught from an early age to be respectful towards our elders. But what about being respectful towards our community? Does that ever come into play? You're about to find out how these 5 boys found out about respecting their community and the consequences of not doing so. It was a normal day in the city of Orpha. 5 friends were walking down the street after school. Their names were Leo, Ganny, Finn, Marco, and Theo. They were all about 13 years old. They were talking about their weekend plans when suddenly they saw something strange. There was a pile of trash in the middle of the street. At first, the boys didn't think much of it. They had seen people throw garbage out of their cars or just drop it on the streets before. But they had never seen so much of it gathered in one place. It was disgusting. The trash was stinking and it made the whole area look filthy. The boys kept walking without saying a word. Each of them was thinking about how bad the situation was. No one wanted to touch the trash. So they just kept walking. When they had walked about 200 meters, they started hearing noises coming from the pile of trash. At first, it was just a cat meowing, but then they started hearing birds squeaking and pigs squealing. It sounded like there was some kind of animal farm in there. The boys stopped where they were to try and listen. They couldn't believe their ears. Then they started to feel a little bit scared. What if the trash contained something dangerous? What if it was a pack of wild dogs or something? After a few minutes of contemplating, they decided to go back. When they got closer, they realized that the sounds were coming from plastic bags moving around in the wind. They were making all those weird noises. The boys felt relieved, but they still didn't want to touch the trash. "I don't want to get my hands dirty," said Leo. "Me neither," said Ganny. "It's not our job to clean this up." They all agreed. After all, it wasn't their fault that the trash was there. So why should they be the ones to clean it up? They just kept walking. But as they walked, they started to notice how dirty the whole area was. There was litter and garbage everywhere. It looked like a dump site. And it wasn't just on the streets. The parks and playgrounds were dirty too. It looked like no one cared about keeping their community clean. And then it hit them. If they didn't do anything about the trash, who would? No one was coming to clean it up for them. They had to do it themselves. "Let's go back," said Leo. The other boys nodded. They all knew it was the right thing to do. When they got back to the pile of trash, they started picking it up. They put on gloves and got to work. At first, it was hard. They had to move bags of trash and broken bottles out of the way to get to the larger items. But as they worked, they started to feel good about themselves. They were making a difference. An hour later, the trash was gone. The boys took off their gloves and looked around. It was amazing. The street looked cleaner than it had in years. They had made a real difference. "We should do this more often," said Ganny. "It's important to keep our community clean." "It's the least we can do." The other boys agreed. They had learned that day that it wasn't enough to just stay away from the mess. They had to be a part of the solution. From that day on, they made sure to pick up any trash they saw lying around. They even organized a community cleanup day. They invited all the other kids in the neighborhood to help out. Together, they made Orpha a cleaner, greener place. And it all started with one small step. Respecting your community means taking pride in where you live and taking responsibility for it. It means being willing to help others and being a good citizen. It doesn't mean being perfect. Just means trying your best to make a positive impact.